Ahoy again, Captain Donna, Hearthstone, Naxxramas neutral cards. This is the next video in the series. We're going to talk about more Plague Quarter stuff. Let's talk about Belcher, the root beer enthusiast, the Sludge Belcher. 5-drop, 3/5. It's got that taunt with the death rattle that summons the 1/2 taunt. So this is commonly known as the double taunt, 5-drop, the double taunt A-bomb, whatever you want to call it. It's similar to the Senjin Shieldmaster, right? Which is a popular card, a 4-drop for a 3/5 taunt. This is 1 more mana, but it has the death rattle to summon another taunt afterwards. So depending on Hornimer, is this like the time when you leap up in the videos? Because you've done this like 2 or 3 in a row. So it depends on, you know, kind of what you need to use the card, what you need to use the card for, and what you need to, you know, you put your tail in my drink there, Mortimer. Let's move this over here, and what the board's like to deal with this card. Definitely hyped really big as an anti-aggro card when it was first released, and since it is now in live version of the game, I think it still is pretty popular as being an anti-aggro card. Anti-aggro card. I played against this card. It's very frustrating. In not even aggro decks, just the 2 taunts in a row. It's a pain in the butt. You know, definitely going to be a popular silence target for sure. What? You want to sit there? Okay. All right. Let's go through the classes here. See if it's any good. Mortimer is not happy with this card. You could tell he doesn't like it. Let's talk about Druid. Well, it's another card that's good to ramp out. I mean, you know, the ramp Druid with your Innervates and your Wild Growths, you know, that tactic of getting minions out on the board earlier than they're supposed to be or whatever. It's powerful, not necessarily for minions that do damage, but for minions that will control the board for a while, because then it gives you the flexibility to dictate what's happening in the match. That's why very popular targets are Druid of the Claw, Ironbarks, Ancient of War, Yetis, Senjin Shieldmasters, I guess Scenarios too. Those are popular cards because they're big, they're beefy, they have more health than they have damage. A lot of them have taunt. They're going to give you control of the board. This card is no exception to that. You know, if you ramp this out on turn 2 with Coin Innervate, or if you Wild Growth turn 1 and, you know, so you have 3 mana and you Innervate, it's 5. I think it's another pretty solid 5-drop for Druid. It's actually very similar to Druid of the Claw, right? If you look at the stats of Druid of the Claw, it's going to be a 4/6. If you look at the stats of this card, it's actually a 4/7 spread out over 2 minions. So it even has a little better stats than Druid of the Claw. You just you can't have them all at once. So I mean, Druid of the Claw, that's probably the best 5-drop in the game. That and Fire Elemental in the Shaman set. And so that this is a card that can kind of hang with Druid of the Claw. I think it's going to be another really good mid-range taunt, and Druid specializes in those because of Innervate and because of Wild Growth. Diminished a little are your buffs, you know, your taunt buffs, your Mark of the Wild, your Mark of Nature. The stats are good, but the thing already has taunt, right? And so it's kind of like you probably are going to save these for your Yeti and for your Ancient Allure play later on in the match, right? Higher health, you know, again, you know, anything with higher health, there's a little more synergy with healing, because it's likely that it can hit something, take some damage, and then you heal it back up. 5 health on turn 5 is a little low, I think, but, you know, your turn 5, a lot of the turn 5 drops are going to be your Azure Drakes, right, which is only a 4/4. Minions like that where, okay, maybe they're not actually going to do, maybe they're not going to do 5 damage. You know, again, the stickier minions, the bigger that they are, the more likely they are to be around for a combo and a Savage Roar, to be around to buff them with Power of the Wild, to finish them off. This minion in particular, it has a good interaction with Savage Roar because it spawns a minion on the death rattle, right? That's why Druid And certainly in Token Druid, they like the Harvest Golems. They like Token Druid likes the Haunted Creeper. Anything that spawns something afterwards is more likely that is going to stick around. Maybe your opponent only has the resources to kill the front half of it, right? If that happens on your turn, you now have a 1/2 with charge. Not much, but for cards like Savage Roar, the value there is just that there's a body there, and not that it's particularly a tough one. It's just that they want more targets. It's another target for Power of the Wild. Things like that. Combo's okay with Poison Seeds and Soul of the Forest as well. You know, these are things that are more powerful with Death Rattle minions. They get an extra value out of there. You know, you're not going to want to drop it and immediately Poison Seeds it because it has a good body, 3/5 taunt, right? But post, you know, maybe it comes down to a 3/1, then yeah, maybe. And if you're thinking about Poison Seeds, then okay, you get the 2/2 and you still get your little 1/2 taunt after that, right? I would say the only downside to Druid is that they already have cards that are kind of, you know, they already have good taunts. Like, you know, they already have Druid of the Claw, they already have Ancients. There's a little bit of a difficulty in cracking a Druid list because they already have good cards on the 5. You know, they already have stuff that they want to ramp out early. And, you know, aggro is not a huge problem with Druid because they have pretty decent tools to deal with aggro, like marking up an early minion, like ramp stuff, like Claw, Moonfire. They have a lot of tools to deal cheaply with minions. Wrath, Starfall, Swipe. So the double taunt, you know, that's supposed to put the bricks. That's supposed to put the bricks. That's supposed to put the brakes on the tempo of like the Zoo deck or the Shockedin deck that you're facing, right? Druid already has a ton of this stuff. Keeper of the Grove is another card. They have a ton of this stuff that can really mess the early game up provided they get the draws. So this is another tool there, but is it a critical one? You know, not really. It's a good ramp target, but I would say that's about it for Druid on the synergy things. And I guess the Death Rattle side for your Savage Roar combos. Hunter, no beast synergy because it's not a beast, so you're already not super excited about how it interacts with Hunter, I guess. You know, having a double taunt is pretty good. Hunter kind of deals with aggro already with Explosive Trap and Unleash the Hounds. It's kind of its big aggro counter deck. This is an anti-aggro card for sure, right? And so you have to analyze how does a class deal with aggro within its card set and what can you do about that. Hunter is kind of okay about that. It has a weapon. Animal Companion always has killer stats whenever it comes out. It's probably the best 3-drop in the game just because of that. And you know, you have Freezing Trap a little lesser. You have some things already that can kind of cope with aggro. You know, Snipe, because it'll kill a minion that's going to come out in an aggro deck. Multi-shot, Explosive Shot for a little later. Houndmaster taunts up on cheaper minions. So I don't know. I thought this card was going to be decent in Hunter, but looking at the set, I don't see that much interaction at all with any of the cards. The only card that I would say none of the Hunter cards really do anything with this. Even Misdirect, right? Because it's a taunt, they're going to be misdirected to it anyway. So I don't think it's really that exciting at all for Hunter, other than, you know, like with all classes, when I say it's not that great for this class, that doesn't mean that you would never build a deck around it. It's just that you have to just focus on the neutral parts of the minion and is it good enough to make your deck list just based off those, because it doesn't have any additional value that it offers to the class set of cards. Yes, that was my hand, Mortimer. I know. It's crazy. Yeah. That's what I thought. Let's talk about Mage. Mortimer seems to be interested in Mage. Now, Mage, you know, Mage likes taunt cards. It has Mirror Image to protect Mana Worm and to buff Mana Worm, right? I can't even see the screen right now, Mortimer. Come on, how are the people supposed to see anything? Let's have a seat or cruise. Okay, you want some pets? Okay. You know, Mage has some minions that you want to protect. Sorcerer's Apprentice is one of those. And where's that goofy card nobody uses? Even the Ethereal Arcanist, if you actually played in a deck with this, it would be a card that you would probably want to protect because you want to have it maximize its secret gains at all. So having 2 taunts you can put in front of those minions, pretty good. A Water Elemental too, if you're facing like a warrior or a rogue, you're going to want to hit that face as much as you can to lock out their weapon advantage. So having 2 taunts that are in front of that, you know, that's pretty good. Pretty good, I think. The freeze mechanics it doesn't do much with, and that's kind of the minus here, is that in addition to Mortimer's taunting me. In addition to having taunts, Mage already has some good control with freeze mechanics, you know, with its Novas. Cone Cold is over here, and you know, and it's Blizzard. Remember Blizzard used to be 5 mana? It's ridiculous. So good. It kind of has these mechanics where it can sort of control what's coming out of the board anyway. So there is a case to be said that maybe a Mage, especially, you know, and that's kind of why Freech Mage doesn't have it. Maybe your Mage doesn't really need that many taunts because it has, you know, it has things that can prevent that from happening. I don't know. I think there's definitely a place for it in Mage because it has... Mage's minions are typically ones that you want to have survive, except maybe the Kirin Tor Mage, but everything else you like it when it's not getting hit by stuff, right? This is 2 barriers in the way of that. You know, duplicate, not a bad card to duplicate, right? I mean, that's a lot of tempo disruption on your opponent's side if it syncs up with duplicate, because then you have the 1/2 taunt out there and you get the 3/5 taunt back, which is going to give you another 2 taunts. Kind of a fun card to sync with duplicate there. Duplicate's new, so people don't... I don't think people have figured out exactly what to do with this card yet, but you know, it's there for that. Okay for Mage, I think. Paladin has some things, you know, they like Druid, like Shaman, you know, they like those minions that can stay around. So higher health stuff is going to be a little more important in Paladin because they like stuff that sticks. Things with death rattles that spawn minions on the other side of things. You know, when you're on an even tempo, if you're dropping this on turn 5, and, you know, you guys have all dropped kind of max mana minions the whole way, it's actually pretty hard to kill the back side of something when you come to that turn. If you have some board presence and you've got some extra card draw, then it's easier. But if it's pretty even match, you know, it's hard to eliminate a Hollerverse Golem completely in one turn on turn 3. Likewise, it's harder to eliminate your Belcher completely on turn 5 if you drop it on turn 5. So Paladin digs that, you know, they like it's already higher health and it's got something on the back side of it. So that means, you know, you can put Blessing and Might on it, you can get a card out of it with Wisdom, you can pull more value out of it with Divine Shield or Hand of Protection. And, you know, the big one for this would probably be putting Blessing of Kings on the 1/2 spawn afterwards, because that turns it into a super powerful taunt, right? It's a 5/6 taunt, then it's a 3/5 taunt and a 5/6 taunt back to back. Pretty solid. Pretty solid, I think. You know, anything that has kind of that double spawn mechanic, like a Harvest Golem, like a couple different cards, Sword of Justice is the bomb for that, right? Because you're getting your Sword Justice, you're getting your sword procs quicker, because you're getting them to buff a minion that you didn't have to spend mana to get, which is really, you know, that's really nice. That's a big benefit of the sword that's there. There's even a little more here with the amount of stuff that can bring things down to 1 with a Paladin. You know, the weakness on this card is that the second taunt, the 1/2, is pretty crappy, right? It's a 1/2 taunt on turn 5, maybe turn 6. Not that great. It's not going to do a lot offensively, and it's not going to really do much. It's, you know, taunts are great when you can make them trade for more than one card, right? Senjin's good because on turn 4 it can do that. The Druid taunts are great because they can do that pretty much all the time. 1/2 taunt's not going to double up on anything, but it can take a hit and survive if you humility the only thing that's out there, or if you peacekeeper it, right? And if they played into a repentance, or you just equality it, all of a sudden that 1 damage does matter. That 1 damage taunt matters quite a bit, because now they're Argent Commander, or they're, I don't know what, all of a sudden Grommash Hellscream is gonna die to this stupid little slime, right? That Redemption is cool. Redemption is cool also because you get a 1/2 taunt and a 3/1 taunt, right? You'd be pulling 3 taunts out of this one card. The unpictured here, Paladin Secret Avenge is pretty cool, I think, and I'm not sure. There's a lot of questions about how Avenge is going to work, and I don't think we're going to know until it comes out. If Avenge works where the 3/5 taunt dies and the Avenge buff goes on the Death Rattle spawn minion, huge, right? That's really good. I mean, you get almost the same exact card back. You get a 3/5 taunt, and then you get a 4/4 taunt afterwards. I mean, we're talking you're pushing Karn Bloodhoof level of stats here, and both things have taunts. So if Avenge syncs up like that, then I think that'll be pretty cool. An interesting synergy that I think is there with Paladin also is that their 4-drop is really crowded, right? And this card is a 5-drop. Paladin doesn't have much of anything on the 5-drop. Holy Wrath's not super popular. Blessed Champion is not real popular either. But I mean, their 4-drop cards are all like, every deck's gonna have a True Silver. You're gonna have 2 True Silvers, 2 Consecrates, 2 Himera Wraths in almost every single Paladin deck that exists. And some Paladin decks are going to run Blessing of Kings, maybe even 2 of them. In Arena, you're drafting all these cards pretty highly. And in addition to the already powerful 4-drop minions like Senjin Shieldmaster, like Chillwind Yeti, those are things that are already going to be out there. So to have another good card that's not on the 4 spot for Paladin, I think is another little buff with this class in particular, because it has a pretty crowded 4-hole. Mage does a little bit with Water Elemental and Fireball, but I mean, we're talking about 3 cards with Paladin. Paladin typically is going to win games with minions, not spells, so things like Senjin Shieldmaster, Yetis, they become a little more important for Paladin too, because it wants minions that can buff. So it's nice that it's not on the 4-drop and it's on the 5-drop, where it's not really that exciting for Paladin. I think that's another synergy there too. I think it's pretty good for Paladin. Priest loves the high health minions, and this is no exception. It's not quite as powerful as the turn 4 Senjin, but it's 1 turn later for 5 health. You're going to try to 2-for-1 that as much as you can, synergizing it with the hero power, with Circle of Healing, to sync that with your Northshire Clerics. Everything with the healing. Yeah, you put a Lightwell behind it, you got 2 taunts in front of a Lightwell, right? With anything that's there that has higher health, Priest likes that because they can pull more value out of it with their hero ability. 5 health isn't terrible for an Inner Fire Divine Spirit combo. A classic Divine Spirit Inner Fire target is a Stranglethorn Tiger, and it has 5 health, right? Granted, it's stealth, so you want it to stick, and this has taunt, so it's going to be in the front lines, but there could be a situation where, it could find its way into one of those decks. Sure. Nova heals it. Valen's a big deal if that comes out with it. It survives a Soul Priest sweep with the 5 health. It's just another fat, high health minion for Priest. And that's good because a lot of Power Word Shield brings it, even higher. That's there. I think that's good for Priest because Priest is pretty weak in the early game, right? That was always their problem, and it still in some ways is a problem. Holy Smite is, you know, their early removal, but you usually want to save that for finisher combos because it's only 1 mana. Shadow Word Pain is an early game, but you actually usually use that for a mid-game card to try to knock down a minion like this. And they don't have much at all in the early game. They got Northshire Clerics and like that, a Lightwell, right? That's it. They don't have any early game stuff. So this is another thing to kind of slow things down, let you kind of recover from whatever life loss you had or whatever board position that you got messed up on in the beginning, so you can start taking back control of things with your Shadow Madnesses, with your Soul Priests, with your Novas, to get into the late game where Priest is real strong because of things like Temple Enforcer. That's beefy. I mean, Temple Enforcer is really good here. Imagine a turn 5 drop for this, your 3/5 taunt. Maybe it survives, right? Enforcer comes out the next turn. You know, you're looking at a 3/8 taunt that spawns another taunt on the back half. Or even buffing the little guy to a 1/5. The 1 damage isn't going to do much, but 5 health could probably stand up. You know, especially against aggro. It's pretty good. You know, its value in Priest is that it's another high health minion. And it's one that comes at a good time for Priests when they're trying to transition into their real cool stuff they can do in the mid game and in the late game. And, you know, they're getting run over a little bit in the beginning. Yeah. Rogue. You know, Rogue has, you got Cold Blood, right? I have to mention Cold Blood whenever I have anything with a Death Rattle that spawns another minion, because it gives you a target for Cold Blood that essentially has charge if it, you know, if your Belcher dies on your opponent's turn and they don't kill a 1/2, then when it comes to your turn again, you have a 1/2 that is new, that you can attack with immediately. So Cold Blood is something that also likes sticky minions, but I've talked about this before. Realistically, Cold Blood doesn't care about that. You're going to put Cold Blood on charge minions, or usually on charge minions, because you want to kill them. You want to kill your opponent with Cold. It's usually always going to be a combo in a lethal, a win condition for rogues. I mean, especially in Miracle, right? So putting it on this, it would be tough for me to see a situation when you realistically would. You know, maybe running the 1/2, you know, stretching it to a 5/2, okay. Maybe if you absolutely had to clear an enemy taunt of theirs, but you'd be giving up a big card that is usually going to be a piece of how you close the game down. The stealth stuff with Rogue doesn't do anything. It has taunt. You want it to be out front. You want it to be slowing the opponent's tempo down, so your Master Disguise, your Conceal, I don't think that's going to do much. It's pretty expensive as a minion to combo with Van Cleef, so that's not super exciting. And it's just a big minion in general. Rogue likes real cheap stuff because it can combo. It wants to combo as many things as possible to get value out of Ringleaders earlier, to get value out of Perdition's Blade on early. They want those turn 3, turn 4 SI Agents combos because 2 damage means a lot then. They want as many cards as they can before Van Cleef. I really don't think that this card is that great at all for Rogue, because almost absolutely none of its cards do anything to it at all. You would never really want to damage a taunt. You know, you want taunts up front to kill stuff. And surprisingly, right, rogues don't really run a lot of taunts in any type of deck that they have. Miracle Rogue just sits back on its haunches until it kills you in 1 turn. And your aggro type rogue it doesn't need taunts because it is usually going to control the board, right? Because it's going to play cheap minions and it has all this removal. It has, you know, you have Backstab, Deadly Poison, Eviscerate, Blade Fury, Betrayal, Sap, Shiv, kind of, Fan of Knives, Perdition's Blade. You have all these things that are based on, we're going to give you board control at the beginning. Like them and Mage, it's like, it's so hard to take board control from them. If they have it at the beginning, because they have all these tools to deal with it. And so you usually don't need taunts. Taunts are cards that you take a couple hits and then you put a taunt out to suck up some of their board, and then you can do something with it to take command back. And so I think the card is actually quite weak in Rogue, and I would be surprised to see it in any Rogue list, because they don't typically struggle with early game stuff. Maybe in Miracle. I mean, I should say maybe in Miracle, just to slow stuff down against real aggro things that are trying to race them, that they can't kill with Fan of Knives. Shaman is another class like Paladin that the 5 health on this is pretty attractive, and the Death Rattle spawn minion is real attractive because it lets it sit around. So now they can trade it up with Rockbiter. They can stick it next to a Flame Tongue Totem to get more value out of it. They can have another body on their side of the map for Bloodlust. You know, those things are really important for Shaman. It's important for how they win games. They have one more minion that they can cruise in and try to pick something off with a Lightning Storm that didn't roll right. Shaman likes that stuff because, like Paladin, they put out a bunch of minions and then try to derive their value out of whatever minions remain. And this, because the 1/2 taunt on the end is gonna, there's gonna be something that's gonna remain there. This is a good target for, I don't know, good, but this is gonna be, I think, another Ancestral Spirit target, because it's a taunt and the value is there. I mean, if you're talking about slowing your opponent's tempo down on your face, you're talking about 1, 2, 3. You're talking about five taunts. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 taunts. No, 5 taunts, because you get the first one, he dies, and then you have the ooze, and the first one again, and then the first one dies again and spawns another ooze. Okay, so 4. Complicated math there, but decent in target for Ancestral Spirit. Not as good as the Dream, which is your Earth Elemental, but still really good. It's a lot of stats you can pour out of it, so that's pretty cool. It syncs well with Flame Tongue Totem, with Bloodlust, with Rockbiter. That's good. Wind Fury, not so great. Well, I take that back. Wind Fury has a value certainly on high attack minions, so you can kill your opponent with it usually with a Wind Fury Rockbiter combo, like you see so commonly with Leroy, and Alakir has Wind Fury, so it's the same concept, but you don't have to invest a card into it. But there is a value in Wind Fury and putting Wind Fury with the Wind Speaker onto higher health minions. And so 5 health is still pretty decent even for a 5 drop. And so, now maybe you're looking at a 2-for-1 and it can do 6 damage and then die and still have a taunt behind it. Yeah, I could get down with that. It's just like totems, it's just something that if you keep it out there, you can do stuff with it, and with the Death Rattle especially, you can use it to really mop up whatever's left over on the next board. Board control is real important for Shaman. They can't really win without it, so not bad. I think it fits in pretty well with Shaman. Warlock it's not a demon. No sacrificial pact. I know everybody was hoping that that you could sacrifice it and get the 1/2 taunt, but sorry, you can't do it. Power Overwhelming is an interesting card for it, because it typically, something with that high health is not something that you're going to want to Power Overwhelming to run it into something, but if you really need to finish it off, especially if it's already gotten some value and it's already killed one minion, the Death Rattle is there. Instead of just Power Overwhelming and having your creature die, you also get a little 1/2 taunt guy out of it. That's kind of cool. So, okay target there if you really need to stretch to 7 damage. And sometimes you do. You don't see much with any of the... There's no real reason you would damage it yourself. That's why I'm not talking about, like, your Demon Fire, Drain Life, Shadow Bolt. Those cards have a little flex in them and you can kill your minions with it, but not much of a reason there to do it. Void Terror, it's funny that Felguard has the same stats, right? And it's 2 mana earlier, but it's the Belcher is definitely, I think, a better card than that. Void Terror. You know, Void Terror is a cool card for Warlock because it can you can trigger the death rattle whenever you want to, right? Having that control that's there, and you get a pretty big benefit out of it because you get all of the remaining value from the stats that's left in the minion that dies. And with this one, that's great. Plus, now you get a taunt. You know, so your Void Terror, when it hits the board, is going to be behind a taunt already, which is good. So that means you're going to be able to swing probably once with it, and it's going to absorb a fairly powerful minion. That said, a 3/5 taunt, this is kind of similar to maybe a power overwhelming situation. You know, a 3/5 taunt, you're not going to want to suck that up immediately. You never really want to suck much of anything up immediately with a Void Terror, except, I guess, the Nerubian Egg. But if it's taken some damage, you know, if it's gotten some value out of already, then a Void Terror is not a bad way to retire this card, especially since you get that little Death Rattle minion out of it as well. Same thing with Hellfire. It guarantees you the board presence after Hellfire and after Twisting Nether if it dies. Oh, it's always going to die in Twisting Nether. If in Hellfire it dies. Shadow Flame, it's same thing. You know, if you're using Shadow Flame to wipe the board, then it gives you a taunt minion afterwards. It's kind of stylistically, a lot of times that you use these cards are when board control is getting away from you, when you're kind of scrambling to get a presence back in the game. That's when you're going to Hellfire. That's when you're going to Shadow Flame things. And so if it's doing a full clear, like hopefully you have done it so it sets up for, having a taunt minion already on the board, even a small one, can give you a big advantage for rebuilding, right? Because it'll give you more control, it'll give you more initiative, I should say, over what's going to go on the next turn. In Zoo for Warlock, you know, a 5-drop is going to be pretty slow. It would be interesting in Zoo because if you were facing another aggro deck, right, which Zoo does have trouble with, it could totally shut them down. But you know, it's just not a fast enough card because it's defensive oriented. But in Control, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty strong anti-aggro card, right? And it's, you know, Control isn't going to be healing itself, it's going to be losing life, but Control wants to lose life in a managed way where things don't get out of control. So slowing down tempo is really important for Handlock, and this card kind of slides right in. It takes, usually your 5-drop is going to be a Mountain Giant, but not all the time. I could see definitely times facing an aggro deck when the choice between turn 5 Mountain Giant and turn 5 Belcher, you would pick the Belcher. It just depends on what the, you know, what the board is like, but I could see it there. I could. Turning to Warrior, it's a higher health minion, and Warrior likes minions that can take damage, you know. They like having things that are damaged, or at least they can take damage, so they can buff them with Enrage, so they can buff them with Cruel Taskmaster, so they can, when they whirlwind the board, their minions don't die, and by doing that, they can fuel Armor Smiths, they can fuel Frothing Berserkers. Those are, yeah, that's why those are good things. Having damaged minions is good for Warrior. Rampage, you can buff them with that. You can pull draws off them with Battle Rage. So higher health is going to be good. You know, 3/5 taunt is probably going to take some damage. It can take a couple hits that's there, and so it opens up all these kind of, hey, my guy's damaged, or it can take damage and survive and still have board presence. It opens those type of things up for Warrior, which is pretty nice, right? Commanding Shout's a little weaker since you like the Death Rattle. You know, you like the Death Rattle that spawns another taunt, but, you know, you could squeeze one more turn of taunt value out of it, right? Maybe that's the difference between to losing the game, is buying that one extra turn on turn 6, turn 7 against Zoo, or a fast deck that's looking to kill you on those turns. Yeah, that can matter. Having a taunt out for 3 turns in a row, pretty good. You know, the charge is Charge is cool because it spawns another minion for no mana, right? So if you kill your Belcher on your own turn and then it spawns the 1/2, you know, you can flip charge on it, have it maybe, you know, trade into something that has 3 health left, or go face and have them have to deal with it on their turn. Have a 3 health, a 3 attack taunt minion that, you know, maybe that's going to kill something else that they attack with. It just depends on the board. Kind of a nice synergy with the commander. You have a double charge here, right? You can drop the 3/5, that charges, and if it charges into something and dies, then you can drop, then the 1/2 spawns, and that also has charge, and so you can send that right into whatever. At least I think it does. I think death rattles count as a when you summon a minion. I'd have to look that up if Harvest Golem works with that. I think that it does, though. If it doesn't, oh, sorry, Mortimer, I just whacked you. If it doesn't, then let me know. But I think you get the double charge play there. And Brawl, you know, like Twisted Neither, it's a full board sweep, and it's nice to have a guarantee that you're going to have a board presence. I mean, even nicer here, it's a board presence with taunt, right? That could save your life if you just brawled against like 3 molten, you know, 3 giants on a handlock, and one of them survived, right? It could save your life for a turn. So Brawl's good. Anything with Death Rattle summons is real good for Warrior. Warrior has some good tools to deal with early game stuff, but it's real important for them to get established in the mid game. So, you know, that's why they have kind of these, you know, your elites and your weaponsmiths and things like that. And so this is just one more tool that's there. I think, especially in Control Warrior, I think this card is going to definitely show up in Control Warrior, because you want to preserve things until you can get to your end game stuff, which is Grom, Gorehowl, but in Control Warrior you commonly see the biggest legendaries in the game, right? You're going to see Rag and Naxxramas, things like that. So a good card for Warrior, I think, overall. Speaking of overall, you know, it's a card that I think it's a good example of a neutral card. It's one that isn't great with any class, but it's one that's going to find its way into a lot of decks, kind of like Ascension Shieldmaster, right? It's going to find its way into a lot of decks because it's a mid-range card and it has 2 taunts on it. It's going to slow aggro down, I think, a lot. And those are decks that typically don't run silences and things like that. Maybe 1, but they're going to save it to get around, you know, a taunt to destroy it, to go to lethal. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a popular card until aggro dies off a little bit, despite it not really doing that much with any of the class stuff. It's difficult for me even to say like what like the best class it would be for based on their card set would be. You know, probably Paladin. I would say, okay, I'll say Paladin's probably your number 1 that's there. Good buffs for it. It is another card that is maybe an alternative to taking Ascension Shieldmaster out of the 4 slot and put it in the 5 slot. So there's a tempo advantage that's kind of built into the class. A lot of the 1 health stuff syncs up. I think Paladin's probably the best class with it. Priest is probably second. Priest and Druid are probably second. Priest because it can heal. Druid because it's a good ramp target. Shaman's probably in the second place as well because the higher health they can do Rock Biter. They can use the Death Rattle, the Bloodlust, and to Flame Tongue. That's pretty cool. Next, you know, next down, I would say I'd say your Mage, Warrior, Warlock. Those 3 are next. Warlock and Control, it's a good anti-aggro card. Control locks play a real long game. And so, despite none of the class cards synergizing with it, yeah, it's still okay just because of how the other cards sort of work. Warrior, because it can take damage, it can take hits, it's a good mid-game card. And Mage, because it can be good for a later game minion like a Mana Worm that comes out later, like a Sorcerer's Apprentice that comes out later. It's better for protecting those cards, and those are important cards to protect. And then the last place guy is going to be Rogue, because Rogue can't really buff it except Cold Blood. It's not that great of a Cold Blood target, and Rogue doesn't really need taunts to do anything. They have a ton of different ways to deal with the board. So, yeah, it's a popular card. It stands out in Paladin. It's okay in most of the other classes, but I think it's going to be in a lot of decks because it's such a good tempo controller. It'll be interesting to see, and I think cool to see how it kind of cruises along. Most people, I would say, would probably put this in their like top 5 Naxxramas cards that came out. So time will tell if they're correct or not. But just looking at it now, it seems pretty good. Mortimer, you're shoving off. All right, guys, Mortimer's out of here. I'm out of here too. Smooth sailing, everyone.